Welcome to a new edition of the Bhandwagon Podcast. And today, my guest is what I would say kind of like a true activist who specializes a lot of his work in my home city of Birmingham.
Birmingham.
Yeah, West Midlands, just to put it in there, just to kind of map it for those who are listening abroad, which is quite a bit anyway. I'll just leave it there. He's somebody who's played a real pivotal role in the last 18 months within the city on various reasons, which we'll get into. But I'm happy to introduce Nathan Dennis from First Class Foundation. Nathan, how are you?
I'm brilliant. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your podcast. I'm excited. It's an honor. It's a privilege. Let's go.
I will say that you probably are the most enthusiastic guest that I've had over the last sort of 4 months. But I really appreciate that positivity, especially it's really hot at the moment. So trying to get through this. If I'm sweating, it's one of those hot days. So just to put it into perspective.
It's not normal though, is it? This heat's like serious. So what we at today, like 30 today, between 30 and 29.
Yeah, it was weird though. At the beginning of COVID last year, do you remember when the first lockdown was announced and it was actually quiet and Christmas on the roads? And
yeah,
you could just see the environment, the air was just working itself out, and we got a proper summer, didn't we, for about a month solid every day.
It was amazing.
Yeah. And then you could kind of tell when people were kind of going back to work or weren't adhering to the lockdown as much. You can see the weather started being unpredictable, where you start getting those 4 seasons in a day. So that was my own marker that people were breaching.
The weather changed.
Yeah.
I hear you. But yeah, it's been a journey. The last 16 months has been it's been quite a roller coaster in terms of mentally, emotionally, just so much change happening within our world, and especially here in the UK. But I'm grateful that we're here, that I'm still standing, that we still have the opportunity to do the stuff that we do through the work that I do within the city. So yeah, it's been a journey, man.
I just want to kind of set the scene then in terms of what your organization does and how it operates, and then kind of work backwards of how you got to that position. So can you just set the scene for us of what your organization does and specializes in?
So First Class Foundation is a charity based in Birmingham, West Midlands, England. Originally, we were just putting ourselves in a category of specialists in youth and community engagement strategies. But then when we started to realize some of the social issues that were happening within our environment, we kind of filtered some of our stuff out into 3 key areas, which was helping to reduce youth violence within our city, helping to improve mental health resilience amongst young people in the wider community we engage, and also connect young people and their families to their purpose through exposing them to more opportunities.
So from that position, obviously that's clear in terms of the business objectives and what you're doing. But if you're did you start and live in Birmingham to start off there?
I'm from Birmingham inner city, Newtown. Grew up in a postcode area of B19. Newtown, most of my family is between Newtown, Northwest Birmingham, basically like Handsworth, Newtown, Lascelles. That's where I spent most of my life, my childhood. And what's interesting is when I was growing up, I didn't realize that there was classed as poor areas, because it was just lots of family, lots of gatherings, in and out of other people's homes, family homes, and even people who you call friends who were operating more like family. It was just more of a sense of community. And I guess when I became a teenager and I started to see some of the challenges, the risky behaviors that young people were taking and the type of trouble that they was getting into, I really started to develop a passion to say, you know what, I want to go back out and make a difference in my community. And I think, change for me, Ricky, if I go right to the core, was, I was a teenager, I made lots of mistakes myself. Got involved in the wrong crowd and etc. That kind of stereotypical story. But when I came to faith, that had a massive impact on my life and my mindset and my mentality. And I became a born again Christian. I gave my life to that kind of way of life, and I really had a kind of epiphany moment, or you could say an open vision, where I felt that I needed to create something that could connect with my community in a more relatable way. I kept on seeing a massive gap, Ricky, in services and how they was relating and connecting with my community. My first ever job in around community like work was at an organization called Community Roots based in Handsworth. So it was on the Soho Road of anyone that knows the city. Birmingham, Soho Road is a very popular road, you know, so like a flagship road actually. And yeah, I used to go to these open day community events, and there would be like 15, 20 organizations in the room, all there for the community. And like we'd wait there, we'll sit there, and no one would come through the doors. You'd have one or two that will pop in through the community center. And I was starting to see that there was a massive gap between statutory organizations, the wider voluntary organizations, and even some private businesses that were trying to advertise their opportunities to the community. And I realized actually there's a bit of a gap here. Like these companies don't have a clue how to engage, especially the African and Caribbean community. So almost like by accident, I had a brainwave to think, actually, let me create something and give people my ideas around how they could more effectively engage with the African and Caribbean community. And that's kind of like how we kind of birthed. And outside of the charity work, I have a separate like training and consultancy company that does all of that type of consultation and strategy development stuff through an organization and company called Legacy Consultants.
It's quite interesting what you were saying before. You know, I was born and bred in Handsworth as well. So it's true you didn't know that it was an affluent area until as you got older, or you got told it wasn't, you know, it was.
Yeah, until you get exposed to different cultures.
Yeah, because it might not be affluent rich, but it was very, very heavily community rich. You had a real cauldron of loads of different communities coming in, and especially in the the late 50s, early 60s, where first generation Asians and Black and Caribbean community, especially coming over, were all housing, like living together at that point. And there's a real, you can see that, you could feel it, even when I speak to my grandparents of identity, of how people celebrate the identity, but we're all in the same kind of struggle. Did you feel that was that something that you felt when you were younger, or was it or did you feel a bit of a disconnect to try and to move out and operate in a different way?
Nah. My I was at a funeral like this last week, and this funeral was actually in West Bromwich, and there was a lot of people gathered at this funeral, and a lot of people just like drinking and having food and like having, I know it was a funeral, but it was actually a joyous occasion where people were together and connecting. And someone was actually asking me like, where does your sense of community? Because they couldn't believe how many people I knew at this funeral. Because like there was it felt like 1,000 people. It wasn't 1,000 people, but probably like about 300 people was there, like between inside and outside in the car park area. And I knew basically probably 80% of the people there. And he says, how can you know so much people? And you know what I started to talk about? I said, when I was growing up, there was a thing called Sunday Festival that used to be in Handsworth Park, where all the reggae sound systems would be in the park every Sunday without fail. And everyone would bring out their kids and we would listen to music, eat food together. And it was like real community. And that's my memories, my fondest and earliest childhood memories, was being just constantly surrounded by my community, constantly going to events where you're just seeing everybody. And that was a lot to do with Handsworth's culture, you know, the reggae culture, the Rastafarian movement, the churches, the different things that was happening back then in Handsworth. And that's where I got my sense of community from, to be honest, from Handsworth Park.
So the connect was there from a young age because of the experience of what you were feeling every week. It was being kind of reinforced. Yeah,
it was just normal. It's just like a normal thing. And then just the Caribbean culture of like, you know, like you talked about the different generations. I don't know how it is in the Asian culture, but I think it's the same, to be honest, because I got Asian neighbors and they did the same with me, like every minute trying to give me food kind of thing. And it's the same thing with like my grandma generation. Like food is a significant thing. Eating together is significant. Sharing food is very, very important. And like that's what I got from my grandparents, like
The sense
food.
of family,
Yeah, the sense
good.
of family, the sense of like nothing's too hard to help each other out. Like I could never go to my grandmother's house or nan's house and leave empty-handed. I'll be given a bag or a Tupperware container with something to take back home. Like you would think that I was walking around with a sign saying, "I am hungry, feed me." It wasn't that. It was just a culture. And I think some people find that hard to understand how other cultures are. I don't know if you've ever been to like obviously we've been in COVID and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's been a challenging time to try and understand how different communities and cultures operate. And I think sometimes the most telling time is times of sickness. So like City Hospital, which is quite a known hospital in Birmingham.
The old Dudley Road, just in case if anyone who's was in Birmingham and moved out.
Yeah, the old Dudley Road. I remember when my granddad was sick, Ricky, and I would go to visit him. And this is not hopefully this is not triggering to anyone, but the harsh reality is when I used to walk on the ward, the only beds that would have masses of families were the Black families and Asian families, right? And everyone else didn't have visitors. And that was consistently day after day. And that for me tells you or shows me that there's significantly something different the way how other cultures deal with or look at family. Because on this specific ward was mainly the elderly. So like nans or grandpas and stuff like that. And the whole family is rolling out at the hospital and being there and visiting. And it's just interesting because when I think about just going back to why I raised this point was about culture, traditions, and things that are important. Like family is really, really important. And that's one of the things you get when you're in Handsworth, in an area like Handsworth, is that sense of family.
Do you still think that the area is like that, or is it significantly changed? I know I still go back through Handsworth now and again.
Significantly.
Yeah.
I think it's significantly changed. I think society has changed at whole. I think that even those who are doing better now, we've kind of like forgotten some of those values. Like, I don't know what generation you are in terms of your culture. But I'm like third generation.
Yeah, I'm third.
Yeah, third generation. And we have some of the principles, but it's not as deep as like Nan and Grandma would have or Granddad. It's a bit changed. It's a bit like, I think we're a bit more self-centered for whatever reason. Or just focused on our careers and what we're doing. So I do think that things have changed. For Handsworth in particular, there's been a lot of new communities that have come in. So the demographics has completely changed. There's a now significantly heavy Eastern European culture that's there now. So that for me, the area has completely changed.
Yeah, I mean, like historically, it's always had like a transient community. It's a transient area where people of different communities come in and then move on and kind of expand out. I think you definitely are right that you don't. It's hard to recognize the whole area, and especially some of the culture when you go back. Like I used to go back and just have my haircut in there and just kind of felt like I used to reset the buttons of like knowing who was around, but then like I genuinely can't recognize a lot of the people around there or recognize some of the area. And I just kind of put that down to kind of like as you get older, generally like your outlook on life changes and stuff like that. And you just see people where there are different stages of life of how they're going to move as a family or as a generation within that. Where would you reckon you could pinpoint it that you felt that there was a bit of a change in that whole area?
Can't pinpoint it, but I know like I can't pinpoint it, to be honest. I know there was a significant regeneration ambition that happened in on Soho Road in particular. A lot of for the African Caribbean community, some of the main spots like Tasha's nightclub and one I can't remember all the names of the places, but there was certain locations, but they just gone now and they're different now. You know, there's a massive project like the Nishkan project, primary school, nursery, the Gurdwara. So things have changed significantly. Some things you could say it's for the better, but then for others, I think it hasn't necessarily been positive. It's just changing it, and it's not the same. And I think what happened as well is when the council stopped allowing really and started to fight against the Birmingham Carnival happening, and then they tried to move it to they tried to ban it at first, and then they moved it to Prairie Bar, and then it started to be problematic. But when I was growing up, I think Carnival, if I remember right, it was at least a 2 to 3 day affair. Well, it's Friday, Sunday at least, or something like that.
I used to remember Birmingham Carnival. We used to come down from Grafton Road, go down to Rookery Road, and see it going up from that bit and going into Handsworth Park from there. I think I've actually thought about the question that I asked you, and it was when I would kind of pinpoint it. I always felt when the trouble in the early 2000s, where there was some of the rioting that happened at that point. I think it was about 2005. I just felt that it just become a little bit unrecognizable at that point, because that wasn't natural. It's had trouble before, but it was relatively calm for a long, long time. And I just felt at that point it was a little bit of a tipping point, because that generation was our generation. We were like the 20-year-olds at that time. And then, I was seeing some of my friends getting locked up or leaving the area completely. And that legacy of what they left behind was there was just nothing. There was just void. And I think that was a real opportunity lost there, where that sense of community coming in to kind of rebuild what was going to be there, or at least determine what the future might look like. Do you reckon that's fair, or do you reckon it's
I was thinking that, because I was thinking 2011 with the Mark Duggan riots, but then I thought, nah, I think it started to change way before that. So I think you could be right with that analysis, to be honest. Yeah, it's hard to say, but I just know that I just think that society's changed a lot. The way how your bills go and your outgoings, it causes people to have to really be on their game. For some reason, I just think back in the day, there wasn't this pressure of the amount of, I know you always had bills to pay, but I just think the outgoing levels are more, so people have to just be I don't have time to do the community stuff or family stuff as much as I used to, because I'm trying to keep a roof over my head. And then that's the battle between social mobility and this whole thing about, being on the career path, and then you kind of leave the area and, want for a better word, you move to a supposedly better area. But my experience of that, what isn't sometimes classed as better is you lose a lot of other stuff. You don't get the community necessarily. In where I live now, it's only the Sikh family that I have about 3 Sikh families that are all one family, but they have 3 different houses on my estate where I live. And they're the only people that have ever come to our house and knocked the door and offered food and give us cards, Christmas cards, try and remember the girls' birthdays and vice versa. And we will have real conversations outside. Other people will be polite, but they have never given it. They've never knocked the door with anything.
Yeah.
The only time they've knocked the door is when they're saying the music's too loud.
Yeah, it's normally, and I don't think that where people, it's funny you say that, yeah, because where I live, even when you see some of the same kind of Asian families, if that was in Handsworth, they would have spoke to each other. Around here, it's they look at you what are you doing here? We were the first ones here. We try to get away from the community. We're trying, it's almost this kind of we've broken out of those social molds of what we were. We want to get better and better. So it's always, I have a running joke with one of the lads, and it was always I lived there 10 years first, 20 years first, and it's a competition of who was the first Asian around here this side. I mean, look, nobody gives a shit, mate. As long as you're happy and good, fair enough. But that social mobility, what you said, I think it comes with social media as well, isn't it? It's because the pressures of trying to constantly look good. You're constantly at work now. If you've got your own business, you're portraying that we're busy, we're doing this kind of stuff all the time. Whereas I think traditionally, when I look back, when my parents used to finish work, they came home and they knew it was family time. They never used to kind of bring the work home. But nowadays, you're online, emails are flying at different times. and you almost kind of get rewarded for working longer hours, but not financially maybe, but out of kind of kudos of like, you know, work hard, you don't stop, you must do better, here's your goals. You're constantly being coached online about how shit your life is, and you can do more and you could do better. But for some people, that's as good as it gets.
I think,
you know what I mean?
I think I hear exactly what you're saying. It's a word that I call that we lack the ability to be content. We lack contentment. So you find that we're constantly like, there's a saying that I say, life is not a destination, but a journey. Start to enjoy the journey. Many of us set these goals and say, when I get a bigger car, or when I get a bigger house, or a nicer watch, then I'm going to be happy. And they put all their focus into acquiring these things. But actually, when they get there, they realize, like, actually, it's nothing. If that makes sense, you got it, and it's like, okay. And what I'm trying to be a kind of ambassador for is empowering people to think about enjoying the journey. So, like, I just come off a call with my uncle who's in America, and he says, "My God, Nathan, you are smashing it, man. It looks like you're killing it out there. I'm watching you, man, on social media and all this stuff." But like when he's like video called me, I'm like lying on my bed in my vest, like chilling. And he's like, "How can you chilling? I thought you'd be working." I'm saying, "Nah, I'm just chilling with the girls. The family, the girls are off. It's holiday season. I'm like trying to have balance." And he was like, "Oh," and I said, "Yeah." I said, "You know what, Unks, I'm not trying to work myself to the ground and then like my kids look at me and turn around to me and go, 'Dad, you know, thanks for all these material stuff, but we never seen you.' I don't want that to be my story." You know, say so. For me, I'm trying to enjoy the journey. I don't wait till I make a certain amount of money or whatever to enjoy my life. I try my hardest to engage with my children, do stuff with them, especially on the weekend, and just like spend that quality time with them. I'm not waiting till, oh, I've got this certain amount of figure, then I'm going to start living life. And that tomorrow's not promised, Ricky, man. And if you know, the blessings or the lessons I learned from the last 15 to 16 months is like anything can happen. Like we are not guaranteed to be here tomorrow. So let us try and live today with everything that we've got. Say yes more to opportunities. Like when you called me or when we had the conversation, he says, "Oh, Nate, would you come on?" I says, "Yeah, no problem." He said yes, because who knows where this conversation might go? Who knows who might listen to this and actually feel like, you know what, that guy's connecting with me. You just don't know where things are. And that's what life's about. It's like just living it and just doing the best you can do with what you've got.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like going back to like life and as it was, like I want to kind of bring it back to where kind of some of the significant changes in your story of your life, and where it go through. So there is the aspect of where we were living. It had the bit of community feeling. It had all of this side, but it did also have another side to it in terms of where, you know, there was some trouble. There was some kind of you know,
Conflicts.
violence. There was everything that was, you know, that it was a place that had everything in there. In your, when you were younger, and you said you used to kind of almost got derailed off, or you did get derailed off, what made you different to everybody else at that point, and what was the environment like there? Especially if you could set the scene of like what the pressures and the pulls were to go down a certain lifestyle, what was that like?
Very, very, very real. Like the harsh reality is, right, your role models, the media you're consuming. I thought that the only way to be someone that had respect is someone that was tough, that had a gangster image. And it was almost like you got a choice. You either be the bully or you be the victim. It almost felt like there's only two decisions, or you stand up for yourself because you're gonna get, you know, in the street culture we'll call it violated. And the pool's always there because you got family members, because even if it's not you that's getting into direct trouble, you got people that you know. And it's like when people are in conflict, people call you and you're expected to respond. You're expected to have their back. So it was very real. Like I definitely was not an angel when I was a teenager. But the worst thing was I had a really warped philosophy, because I thought that masculinity and manhood was defined by how much money you had, how many girls you had or had slept with, and how tough you was. I literally was that simple. I know it sounds really ridiculous, Ricky, but
No,
that's
no,
how I used to
I
that's how I used to
understand.
value myself. I used to value myself against that. So I wasn't a man if I didn't have money in my pocket. I wasn't a man if I didn't have multiple girls and relationships. I wasn't a man if I couldn't fight someone and win and knock them out or whatever it was. And that was how you was getting your respect and your stripes. And I think for me, like, I went for a season where, like, especially when I became a teenager and I found the ability to hustle and wheel and deal and do different things to make money. I was got to a place now where I'm living this like.
What were you doing at that time? What kind of stuff was going on, or what? If you don't want to share your own story now, what was some of the other people around you doing?
Yeah, it's everything. Like you're doing fraud. There's crime happening. You're just finding ways to make money. Is that making sense? Like just trying to do anything like criminality. And one of the things that was crazy for me, Ricky, was I remember this time I started to go out like partying, raving, and I used to go Broad Street a lot. And then I do Broad Street till like at 2 a.m. in the night. Broad Street's a famous street in Birmingham for those that don't know. Google it. And after that, you go to like what people call the shub-ins, like the after party that will probably start at 4 o'clock and don't finish till 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. And I remember, you got cash in your pocket, you're buying drinks and you're doing all the dancing with the girls. And I remember going home night after night and I'm like, I'm not happy, man. There's something missing in my life. And I couldn't put my finger on it because I'm doing the things based on this value system that I have. Be tough, have money, and have girls. And I'm like, I still don't feel peace. I do not feel fulfilled. And what happened for me is like when my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife of 15 years, fell pregnant or got pregnant. I kind of said to myself, I didn't want to be like the men that I had seen growing up in my life. I didn't have much positive role models, to be honest.
What were
So,
the role models at that time?
men that had loads of kids but they wasn't looking after them, and I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be that in my children's life. And it just so happened that the person who had my first child was someone that I actually loved, even though that at the time as a teenager, Ricky, was something hard to confess, to talk to to talk to men about, like, I actually love her, that was kind of seen as being soft. It's weird. It's all warped when you think about it, the environment you can grow up in. But anyway, I started to attend a church in Nechells, Birmingham, and I can't explain it to this day, but I felt such a peace and such a sense of like finding my purpose and finding my why. And there's a quote that I always use, Ricky, when I'm doing speeches and talks, and it's one of my favorite quotes, and it says, "The two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why." And I felt like when I came to faith and I gave my life to Christ and started to walk a kind of born again Christian life, it's like the money that I had around me couldn't compare. The girls couldn't compare. This macho fake image that I had couldn't compare. And I just found peace and I found purpose. And then I started to pursue the charity work, what I've talked about already. And then through that, I've had offshoot organizations and companies through that. And I'm just now much more happy, much more peaceful. I now have 4 daughters with my wife. We've been together for 15 years. I've been completely, I don't know, it sounds like a mad thing to say on a podcast, but I know from where I'm coming from, I've been completely faithful for the last 15 years. And for me, that's a ridiculous miracle because based on how I was like indoctrinated, I was indoctrinated in a different philosophy. So being faithful was not something that I even thought I could do or achieve. But I felt that through my faith and through, God saying to me that he will be with me and he wouldn't leave me nor forsake me, and he'll give me guidance. And I've been on that path. And yeah, now me and my wife run our companies like what we have.
Yeah, Serena, there's no way that we don't see you separate. Everything's always together. So it's always interesting. I once said I was going, should I invite her as well? Like have the 3-way on here, because I know
Yeah.
somehow she's gonna get involved. It just happens, and it's
Yeah.
How did you then you were talking about you had the I'll say the negative role models at that time, where based on the behavior and the philosophies that were going on there. Your inner circle at the time of your friends, how did they react to your behavior? Because you're swimming against the tide here. You're going against the grain.
They thought I'd gone crazy. They thought I was mad. There's like, what's he on about? He'll be back. Because I was like, my nickname was Skipper. They nicknamed me Skipper because I was captain for those who I was, hanging around with, riding with, whatever you want to call it. And they was like, I'll be back. There's no way. He loves party life too much. So, in the club, I'm up front, center, big gold chain, buying champagne. That's the lifestyle I was living, it like hardcore. And they thought I was crazy. They was like, bro, Christian, faith, you're walking away, you're leaving everything. And I walked away, Ricky, from everything with tears in my eyes. And I said, I can't do this life no more, this lifestyle. And the truth of the matter is, Ricky, for about 3 years I was away. I ghosted everyone because I was on this mad journey, personal development journey, where I had to really find myself. I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking. I was now reading the Bible and going to church and doing all that kind of stuff. And I just went through a mad journey for 3 years where I just had to find
what were your mates doing at the time? And so you're doing concurrently at the same time. What were they doing?
They're just doing the same old stuff. They're still partying. They're still girls. They're still trying to make money. They're just still trying to do the same thing. And like, at first, there has been people that was really offended because for them, I abandoned them. I left them. I was like the main person that organized all the social events and stuff. The holidays. I remember like the last holiday I actually organized for all the men was to Amsterdam. We went to Amsterdam Carnival. And I booked all the hotels and everything, and we really turned it up out there. And I realized after coming back around that there still wasn't there was no one that stood in that role. So I started to do retreats and stuff with them and take them into the countryside and spend time, and they got to understand my heart and my journey. And all of them, majority of them, 95% good friends, and they all have come back to me separately and said, we respect you, because you know what, Skips, you have kept it 100. And what I always said to myself, Ricky, if I'm going to be 100 when I'm in that lifestyle, when I'm step out of that, I'm going to be 100 in this and give it all my very best. And yeah, like I've seen them come around in it. Like some of the most rewarding stuff I've done, I don't do it as much as I used to do, but I go into prisons a lot, and I speak to guys in it who are in prison for doing things that I was doing when I was a teenager. And I'm able to go in there, say that, look, I've completely changed my life. I'm married, I have a business, I've got a charity. And I really try and go in there and just be an inspiration to them to say that, you know what, it doesn't matter how bad life's got, it doesn't matter all the mistakes you got. If you make a decision, you can change your life. And I try and bring that hope and bring that kind of second chance message that, you know what, I don't care how, down and out you are. If you make a decision and really work hard, you can come back, man. You can bounce back. And that's what I'm passionate about. That's like my core passion is about. When it's all said and done, like my core passion is helping people. And that's what I guess, Ricky, for some reason you've touched, I don't know why I'm going this way, but one of my frustrating things now in my life right now with all, because I'll be honest, we talked about the weather. I see life like seasons. So like there's sometimes in your life where you feel like you're in a winter and those first 3 years of my faith journey, it felt like a winter. It was like I was in isolation. It was cold. I wasn't around no friends, nobody really. I trying to find myself. And then before even that happened, it was autumn, like people dropped off. I dropped people off, and like in the leaves on the tree, to drop off. Then I went into winter. But then spring happened, like new buds of opportunity happened, and then summer. So like right now in my life, I can be honest and say, give thanks to God. I'm in a summer, like things are going really well. But one of the things that frustrates me in my community, and I don't know if it transcends in your community as well, is like the hate culture. And like people like see the success or see the fruits of your work, hard labor, and then think that it came easy. And Ricky, it didn't. Like, I've just been hand on my heart, genuinely with my life, trying to help people. And people have connected to that. Like, when I get opportunities, a lot of the opportunities I've got is through relationships with people and through just people connecting and said, you know, something about you, Nathan, I'm going to give you an opportunity. And some of the opportunities have been amazing. And then there's other opportunities where, like, you have to do your tendering and stuff. And the fact of the matter is, we don't lie in our tenders. We talk about the work that we've done, and that translates on paper as well. And then
you know, you just said something there about like I think that jealousy and that hate is kind of like in every community that's out there. I just think why it might be a little bit different in ours is because everyone in essence started at the same point. You get what I mean? Like a race. And then some people are going to go way ahead than others. And some people, you know, that first generation, second generation of what's going on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you see somebody like almost kind of your peers and you think, oh, how did they do that? You know, they started with nothing. That sense of it's an inherent sort of philosophy of jealousy that sort of kicks in. And it's about understanding as well, isn't it? You know, like where people want to understand where they went right, where did they go wrong, and it manifests itself in that hate. I'm not saying that they purposely do that hate. It's almost like if they, how come they did it and I didn't do it? You know, you're gonna get that in every aspect. But I just think it comes down to how you use that energy, whether you want to stay in that position. You can still, you know, jealousy is a healthy thing. Jealousy can be a healthy thing. Sorry, it can be that motivation to make you do better and do it. And I know that, you know, from the kind of work that we've done together before, like you utilize that as kind of fuel. But I don't think as a community or communities that lesson has been learnt yet.
Because what do you know the worst thing is? Because I always say, instead of hating in silence, like come and ask, and God is my witness. I will tell you, like I'll tell you everything I know. Like I'll show you what I did. I'll show you the sleepless nights. I'll give you the manual of what I did behind the scenes to get to where I'm getting. And I'm nowhere near where I actually want to be in my vision, but I'm definitely making progress, type of thing. And that's ultimately my heart, man. Is just to help people.
One of the things where I remember where I met you first was at an event where you bought quite a lot. I know you've been, and you know, for those who are watching and listening, Nathan has been very, very diplomatic and very polite in when he's talking about some of his stories and incidents of what he's mentioning. That you brought some of those close friends of yours or who have been kind of rehabilitated. And I remember there was an incident in Birmingham where there was a stabbing that literally happened a day or two earlier, and we had the event where we met for the first time. I mean, that's been one of your kind of things where things have happened, and you've got you know, unfortunately, I'm just being generalizing, stereotypical here. A young guy has been stabbed to death. And I remember speaking to you that day, and you said something which stuck in my mind, saying, you know, this is like, it's such a routine. It's become like, it's almost detached emotion. Like, this is like a script of behavior that you were doing.
Yeah.
Why is the knife crime problem becoming such more of a mainstream issue? Because I've always felt it's always been there. It's just the attention now is kind of switched onto it.
I think, like, if you think about my generation with violence and all that kind of stuff, right? There wasn't social media. So one of the trainings I deliver, Ricky, is a thing called navigating the new terrain. And in this training, I've been using this training with like youth offending workers, parents, people who work around young people. And what I say about navigating the terrain is that one of the things I think that people haven't accounted for is the power of social media and the power of influence and music. And the fact that, like, when I was younger, I'm an 81 baby, like 80s baby, right? When you listen to Top of the Pops, the music that was listening to that was chart topping was like real take that type of pop music. I don't know if Sugar Babes is probably still too early, but it's what I call popular music, like really like fun loving, woohoo, happy music. What is number one now is a song that's talking about stab you up, shoot you, sell drugs, do this, do that, the other. That's glamorizing, or rappers will always say, I'm not glamorizing, I'm just talking about the life that I've lived or life where we've come from. And what's happened is that like street culture has now become what is now popular culture. So what is chart topping is a culture that is very negative, is lyrics that are very disruptive. And I feel that young people are getting hooked and almost seduced by this music, by the media now as well. So what happens now, Ricky? I don't know, like if you can think about someone that was a celebrity for you when you was younger growing up. For me, I liked WWE, what was WWF back
WWF,
then.
yeah, yeah. We're traditional, yeah, so we'll still call it WWF.
Yeah. So like Ultimate Warrior, for instance, was my
Yeah,
favorite wrestler,
yes.
and Hulk Hogan, and Legion of Doom was my like tag team that I used to like. And then say my favorite boxer was Mike Tyson. When I was growing up, Ricky, there was no way in God's green earth I could see their lifestyles. And I wouldn't even really realize that Ultimate Warrior was actually someone very wealthy, and Hulk Hogan is. He's still alive, so you can start kind of see his stuff. Or Mike Tyson, obviously making millions for his fights. There was no way I could scroll and start to see his house, his car, his lifestyle that he's living. This generation can do that with all of their idols, footballers, rappers, fashion icons, businessmen, and they can just watch all this content 24 hours a day, and they're seeing a lifestyle that is really glitzy and glamorous. Everyone's posting their best picture on best pics on social media. So that mixed with all this stuff that they're visually consuming, all the stuff that they're consuming for their ears, I think it's a cocktail for disaster. So young people are now manifesting some of these behaviors who are living in poor communities that don't have opportunities. Some of these communities, it takes how many miles just to find a cash point machine or a bank? Like, there's not a lot of opportunities in this area. So what happens? They get into drugs, they get into turf war, they get into problems where they take out their angers with each other. Lack of like even on a kind of recreational activity level, they're not having access to like go to a boxing club or do some sports to like release your energy and your tension. So what happens? All this anger and this frustration, they're taking it on each other, and it's now become a. I think that's the real pandemic right now, or epidemic at least. Anyway, is youth violence. It's horrible, man. It's really horrible, and they've become nihilistic where they don't have emotion. They're not even connecting it. It's like it's easier. I remember a young person speaking at a conference that I was speaking at. I got him to come with me, and I said, "What do you think the problem is at the moment?" And he says, and I'll never forget it. It's from Handsworth as well, actually. And he says, from his assumption or assessment of young people, especially the ones that he's around in Handsworth, saying that it's actually more easier to die than to live. So for young people, it's actually like an escape to die. Dying is easy. Live like living is hard. It's hard to live out here. It's hard to try and find money and all this stuff. And I was like, that just broke my heart, man, because like, wow, there's young people that think that it's easier to die than to live. So that's when I started a project called the Your Life Matters Project. And I started to aggressively start to tell young people that your life matters, and that I believe that you're born with a God-given purpose, and that everyone in this world has something to offer and something to give, and to value your life, and life's worth living. After that conversation.
I mean, like what you mentioned about the social media, kind of the whole imagery around it. I think there was an argument when it got to a stage where, oh, is it music, is it video games that are going to influence it? And there was enough rhetoric then to kind of back that away and say, no, no, no. Like if I'm singing about a drive-by, it doesn't mean I'm going to go and actually do a drive-by. But I never thought what you just said then, where how that the kind of alternative music, what you've just said, or that the gang violence music that you said has now gone into popular mainstream.
Mainstream.
It's actually happening in the Asian culture as well, with a lot of the kind of music that's coming. There's a lot more guns in videos. There's all these kind of things. And having this conversation, I'm feeling exactly like what my parents used to say. Getting old in that, right?
Mhm.
But I think when you got like social media pages dedicated to violence, of how people got robbed, how they stole your car, and all these, you know, it's got to play some of a role
It's
as.
having an impact, man. And a lot of rappers are in denial because at the end of the day, if they was to be honest about it, you're gonna mess up their money. Corporate companies are investing heavily into them, Ricky. There's certain rappers, right, that are getting serious endorsements by serious brands and getting paid good money just to post up products in um people's like in their Instagram feed or whatever. So it's very lucrative. Like the negative is selling, and it's selling at a hot pace.
But how
Like
do
people,
you get your message to those people? Like, you're connected, you're quite heavily connected. Surely in those same kind of speaking circles, or those areas that you're talking about, that you are able to have those conversations to say, look, I was thinking the exactly same as you, but I've got enough evidence, that enough funerals that I'm attending, to say this is
so
wrong,
yeah,
this is changing.
for me, Ricky, the only time you get the real heart to heart is two moments. When you're sitting with them in the chapel in prison, when they're in prison and doing a big 15 double figure sentence, and they start listening then. And also when you're at like these things that we do, like vigils and stuff, where they're like at the family house and they're all crying their eyes out because their friends died. And that's when you can talk to them and plant seeds, because they're now, the bravado's dropped. They're not as like being, hyper masculine, to just like more humbled. And then you can talk to them. And then you find some people that like will reach out to you on the one-to-one and say, what did you do? You're gonna say, how did you change your life? How did you get out? Kind of thing. And then I teach them, like I have a program that I've written called the Street Smart to Business Start program, that we've run a number of times with young people who are coming from that lifestyle. And we basically teach them how to have transferable skills, to say that actually, if you was doing crime or doing whatever, actually you've got skills there. We don't celebrate the crime, but we let them know that actually, say if it was someone that was doing robberies, it's like, you're very good at strategically planning. The fact that you called a team together, you know how to manage human resources and how to put different people in different positions. And it's about making them understand, not glorifying the crime, but letting them to know that actually you have skills inside of you that you can use to set up a proper business, a legal business, and make a change for your life.
Was there, like, you don't obviously have to name individuals in there, but was there ever an incident or an experience that you went through around somebody getting hurt, murdered, or anything like that, that stuck out significantly for yourself? And if so, what was the kind of reverberations around that within the community?
I can be very honest and say I personally was the organizer of an event in 2000 at the Oakland's Youth Centre in the year 2000 in remembrance of my sister who passed away. And it was an event called Heaven and Earth. So what it was that I organized five-a-side football tournament, and indoor inside the Oakland's Youth Centre. We did like pool table competitions and table tennis competitions. And then after, we had like music, sound system. And the harsh reality of that event is that that event ended with a young man. He was a bit old. He was older than me, but a young man still. He was shot and murdered after, an incident that happened outside the Oakland's Centre. That's when I realized that that things are happening, innit? But when it's actually happens in front of you and you're leaving and you have to walk over the body or walk around the body, that's when I started to just really realize that this thing is real, man. And I think some of those things and other things, people getting robbed and there's a lot of conflict happening, those things play on your mind and you start to think, God, you can't live in this lifestyle for much longer, because
You ain't gonna win.
you ain't gonna win. It's death and it's destruction. That's the harsh reality. Yeah, when you think about Handsworth, man, Handsworth is an area that's really worn the t-shirt on this thing. It's a flagship area. Like if you go into jails and you say you're from Handsworth, you get stripes, you get passes, because people just immediately think, oh my God, you must be someone serious.
B21, yeah.
One like it's a
B20 don't count if anyone's watching. It's B21. It's True Panzer.
I'm not pushing
The whole postcode was a big thing, especially where I used to go to school in Lordswood. I used to have to travel for like catch the 11 from there,
yeah.
go past two schools, which was George Dixon, Cardinal Newman at that time, and then get to Lordswood. And it used to be alien territory for me because there's only used to be a few of us used to come from that area. So it was like you were, not that you used to get passed, you used to get respected a little bit, but there weren't enough of you to try and be unified to do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you did have that vulnerability and exposed to say, oh, you're from there, you should know this. Do you know this person? I was like, yo, mate, I don't know anyone. You know, I'm on the last road to West Brom. But that vulnerability and that whole experience, you know, is a big thing. You know, you just said like, you know, walking around a body and those things. How did that affect your development after that bit? Because not everyone at a young age is going to see that you've just gone through such a traumatic family experience. You can just see
it wasn't even nothing. It was just like a chat that everyone had, like, oh my God, did you see it? But after about 2 weeks, you move on. And that's the thing, is like masculinity, and I think that's where mental health plays hard in especially the African Caribbean community, because we're not taught to talk about things and show emotion or even show weakness. So for me, even if I was going through something, for the type of people that's around to kind of say, oh, this is affecting me, you'd be seen as a, like, you know, a pussy or a weakling or something like that. So you wouldn't want to show that vulnerability. So sometimes you don't deal with yourself, but that's when then we see in statutory services, you know, a lot of black men being sectioned under the Mental Health Act, because I believe it's almost like they've kept all this stuff and this trauma inside of them, and then it explodes in their mind, and they go through like more serious episodes.
So
I think we need to make conversations about mental health, trauma, depression, like much more normal.
It's a bit of a controversial point, which I'm going to raise at this point, Nathan, which is like, I think quite easily communities can blame services for a lot of things. And yes, I do think that they own their fair share of responsibility. But as communities, what do you think we could do to help the services as well? Because I think it's a two-way relationship.
What could we do to help the services? For me, one of the things that I think that I practically do is I do a lot of consultation. I do a lot of focus groups. So if you think about the CCG and people like that, the journey I will take them on is first to try and assess what is their problem. So they might say, Nathan, we have a big problem with engagement with the African Caribbean community. So we'll do a focus group to kind of unpack that and really look at that, right? And then we'll do another focus group that will be looking at service design, but we would actually bring service users or people, the actual target group, into the focus groups to help co-design. We call it co-production, to kind of look at how can we make this service a bit more culturally relevant, more sensitive, and more appropriate. And then we would work with that organization, or it could be like the CCG, to like help them redesign their service with their input from the actual service users that they're trying to engage, or the very demographic. And then there's sometimes when we get like, we continue that journey where we actually help with some of the promotion and distribution of that kind of project or service that's been redesigned, and help them like get it into hotspot areas where they probably won't. But I do think like how communities can help services is probably working with them more and creating workshops together where you can co-design ideas. But you do need a space and the time to do that. My ideal would be, outside of COVID, would be like the kind of environments we create with like really fun, high energy, lots of flip chart, lots of color sticky labels, and you make it like really arts and crafty and really like just rip things apart, and then you come up with the ideas at the end, and then at the end of the ideas, you have like a kind of recommendation report or action plan that you can take forward.
But how would you get those those street lads, for example, to kind of engage into it? Because what I feel is that
what I have done,
oh yeah, go on.
is I engage them around their passion. So one of my most, it's probably not the biggest project I've ever done, but it's the most successful, was a project called the Silent Screens Project, which was a mental health project that I ran on behalf, no, first I've done it for myself, and then I've done the same project on behalf of National Mind London. But what the first thing was, I never ever spoke about the project being a mental health project. I engaged all the lads around music and I said, let's create an album together, but let's create an album that's going to talk about some of the things that we go through as men. And I always started with them being the experts at the table. I said, look, I'm just facilitating this. I want to know what's your thoughts around creating an album, putting this music together. And you'd find that that would have like a positive impact in terms of engaging them, because they was engaged with the project through the music first.
So Nathan, this podcast is known as the Bhandwagon, and what I do is I give an opportunity to all my guests really to kind of raise anything that they want to discuss or have an opinion on, or jump on a bandwagon or get off a bandwagon. So is there anything that, I know you said something.
Racism.
Oh God. Okay. I was gonna try and get that, especially I was gonna kind of come to that if you didn't mention it. So I mean, the easiest kind of start is obviously what's happened, what we've experienced over the last couple of weeks with the England team and some of the players within there.
Yeah. And I think today with Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. I think it's kind of easy to use those as examples. However, not but important to try and understand that these conversations are going on for generations within there. How do you firstly, what's your opinion on it all?
I just think that basically England for too many years has tried to turn a blind eye on this and act like it doesn't exist. So even when George Floyd tragically was murdered in America, England was trying to put up its chest and act like, oh, that type of stuff would never happen here. That's just in America. And that's when Black people in particular, and even Asian people, got their back up, because like everyone knows about microaggressions, and when people look at you funny or people cross the road, like racism being happening in England, but it's just a bit more undercover and behind the scenes. And what's probably even more worse is when you talk about systemic racism, when you talk about someone having a racist view about you and making decisions based on being in a position of power that can have a detrimental impact on your earning capacity or your ability to get promoted in an organization just by the base of your color of your skin and how you look, or if you don't fit the norm. So like, yeah, I think it's what's just happening is that I think COVID's become almost like a pressure cooker, and everything that was actually there, and a magnifying glass, everything that was there is just being magnified. All this stuff was there before, but I think people are just being a bit more verbal than they have been before. And I think that could be a number of things: lack of social contact, frustration. So people are just speaking their mind, especially on the social media perspective, when you see all these back and forths happening, But it's horrible, man. And I just feel that the government needs to take it much more seriously to understand that, this stuff needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because it was like a week ago. I went to a spa, and I was just talking, and there was a lady there, and she was talking about the footballers and stuff, and I was like going, like discrimination and things is kind of a part of life. Everyone's got discriminated on some point, or who discriminate against others at some point in their life. I think, but I remember doing a podcast with another guy, and he said something like, if you're still the same as you were 20 years ago, you ain't grown. If you ain't changed since a year ago, you ain't grown. And I think it's for people to kind of learn and behavior and change ways or try to understand situation. I think we always got to give kind of a road to redemption. So I think, especially what Rashford does, he's killing them with his love, isn't he? The way that how he behaves and what he does within hearts and minds. And I think that's the only way through action and demonstration to be done, because a lot of these organizations have been saying, you know, like wearing different badges and all these kind of things, but nothing's changed in that way. I think it's only kind of action and through behavior it can be done, because like that's my own personal opinion. Whether it's right or wrong, you know, that's for others to kind of work out. Or if people have got their own ways of doing it. I think when you put a spotlight on something, you put it and you say, okay, what we're going to do now, how are we going to move forward? And then you look at, you know, children and the way how, you know, gangs are, you know, crews are multicultural. And I think it's just a natural way of life where things are just going to evolve. And I think it'll go away. But I think social media people in that way, one of the proposals to have like verified accounts and things. So
have ID, man. You can't just set up an account. All these troll accounts, that needs to stop immediately. And that's as simple by just doing the ID, photo ID registration.
So apart from, I know I'm just trying to trivialize it, but apart from the racism, is there anything else that you feel like, you know, the bandwagon that you would jump on or jump off, or what you would like to raise?
Nah, that's it. I wouldn't want to go into the conspiracy theories around COVID. That's a whole different topic.
Yeah, I think we'll put that on we'll get that another podcast in it, and then we'll get some of the other different views and opinions on that, because obviously
it's out there.
Yeah. Well, I can't really talk about it on a lot of it, because some of my own like podcasts have got shadow banned. Some of my own posts have got shadow banned when I put things on online on Insta, especially. So very interesting. But anyway, Nathan, I'd like to just thank you for coming on. You're definitely one of the like main characters that, you know, I've enjoyed working with, and, you know, always love to have a chat, just get the feel, you know, just get the vibe. And when we had this chat, you asked me a question, you know, how are you in it? Not necessarily about like, you know, your work and things like that. And I think, you know, your community work, what you do, you know, is amazing. And you are a credit to yourself and the community that you work with.
Yeah, I'll just say thank you so much for the opportunity. And if anyone wants to follow us on our charity socials, FC Nation UK, follow me on LinkedIn, Nathan Dennis. Please feel free to connect.